For over 2 years now, we've all been hearing about the war in Ukraine, and it's almost always framed as a fight for democracy. But what if there's another story unfolding? One that pulls our focus away from the battlefield and shines it on the boardroom instead. Today, we're going to dig into a source that argues exactly that. And this really gets to the heart of the matter. The source material we're looking at basically asks, is what we're seeing really just a fight for national sovereignty? Or could there be a different kind of invasion happening at the same time, a corporate and digital one being built right in the shadow of the war? Okay, so let's start where most of the headlines are, with what the source calls the widening war. It begins by looking at the official story we all hear, and it points out this recurring theme of constant, necessary escalation. I mean, the amount of money involved is just staggering, almost hard to wrap your head around. We're talking billions upon billions in taxpayer dollars from NATO countries, from the US, all pouring into this war effort. And it's consistently sold to the public as a moral duty, the price we have to pay to defend freedom. And it goes way beyond just the money. The source points to language just like this idea of preparing for the kind of war our grandparents fought, and says, hey, pay attention to this. The argument here is that this isn't about finding a quick solution. It's about getting the public mentally prepared for a much larger, maybe even a generational conflict. So when you put it all together, the point the source is making is pretty clear. The message we're getting feels like it's setting us up for a forever war. There's no ceiling on the spending, no finish line in sight, just this constant preparation for a bigger, longer, and more permanent state of conflict. But, according to our source, that perpetual war is only one side of the coin. And that brings us to the second part of this argument, the corporate invasion. The idea here is that while all of our attention is glued to the tanks and the trenches, a totally different kind of invasion is happening, one fought with contracts and investment deals. And these are the key players the source identifies. We're talking about the absolute titans of finance, BlackRock, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. And the source's point is, they're not just waiting on the sidelines for the war to end. No, they're right there, at the table now, actively helping to draw up the blueprints for Ukraine's reconstruction. And this is where the source says we really need to pay attention to the language. That word, reconstruction, is getting a whole new meaning. It's not being presented as humanitarian aid. It's being framed as a mechanism for the strategic privatization of everything valuable in the country. We're talking its farmland, its energy grids, and even its entire digital framework for the future. To show just how deep this influence supposedly runs, the source points to this quote. What this suggests is that these financial powerhouses aren't just reacting to what happens in politics, they're in the room helping to shape it from the very start, way before anyone ever casts a vote. So here's the bottom line, according to this analysis. The war itself is the opportunity. The crisis is the whole point. It's what makes it possible to sell off assets that would normally be politically untouchable, things like huge stretches of agricultural land, and put them into foreign hands. All under the banner of, we have to do this. All right, so if we've got an invasion with tanks and a second one with contracts, the source argues there's a third one happening with code. And this brings us to what might be the most startling part of this whole analysis, the idea of Ukraine as a digital testbed, a laboratory for a new kind of society. For example, the source flags this statement where the war was actually called an opportunity, not a tragedy, but an opportunity to speed up the rollout of something called central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. The argument is that this crisis is the perfect catalyst to push through a completely new kind of digital money. So what exactly are these CBDCs? Well, according to this viewpoint, they're not just like using Venmo or Apple Pay. This is a whole different ballgame. It's digital money that could allow a central authority to see everything you buy, to restrict what you can buy, and even program your money so it can only be spent in certain ways or at certain times. So the source lays out this potential four-step plan. Step 1, a crisis hits, which creates the opening. Step 2, you introduce these new digital currencies, the CBDCs. Step 3, you start integrating everything, all government services, into this one digital platform. And the final step? Well, according to the source, that's where you get a new kind of centralized control, where things like privacy and personal autonomy are, let's just say, managed. And the big worry here, the real end game that the source points to, is ending up as a society where your economic freedom and your privacy have basically been chipped away. Think about it. In a system like that, if you disagree or don't comply, they wouldn't need to use force. They could just flip a switch and turn off your ability to buy or sell anything. And this is where it all comes together. Why should any of us care about this if we're not in Ukraine? Well, the source's answer is simple and pretty chilling. The argument is that what's happening there isn't a one-off. It's being built as a test case, a blueprint that could have implications for all of us. And you can really see the two clashing stories here. The official narrative says this is about defending democracy, it's humanitarian aid, it's protecting a sovereign nation. But the source we're looking at says, no, this is about consolidating wealth, building a system of digital control, and creating a model you can then export to other countries. And what the source is arguing is that this follows a pattern, a kind of formula you can use again and again. First, you exploit a crisis. Then, you weaponize the public's fear to push through huge changes that would never fly otherwise. And what's the result? A huge shift of wealth and control into the hands of a very small group of people. So this is really the final warning shot from our source material today. The idea is that if this model, this combination of a taxpayer-funded war, followed by a corporate-owned reconstruction, all wrapped up in a state-controlled digital life, if that model works in Ukraine, it will not stay in Ukraine. It'll become the new blueprint ready to be rolled out anywhere else. And that leaves us right back where we started, with that one big question. After looking at things from this particular angle, the question isn't just if democracy is being defended, but if, just maybe, it's being completely redefined right in front of us.